By the year 1598, King Philip II of Spain was the most powerful man in the world, but also one of the most miserable. He ruled over a vast global empire stretching from the cold mountains of the Netherlands to the steaming jungles of the Americas, from the Philippines, named in his honor, to the sun-drenched plains of Castile. Gold poured into his coffers from the New World. His word shaped the lives of millions, and his hand stirred the fates of empires. And yet, in the final year of his life, Philip II was confined to a small, dim room in the El Escorial Palace, paralyzed by pain and eaten alive from within. For decades, Philip had lived a life of grim devotion. He was a monarch forged in the fires of religious zealotry, believing with unshakable certainty that he was God's chosen defender of the Catholic faith. He had waged wars to crush Protestantism, sent the Spanish Armada against England, and persecuted heretics across Europe with the cold efficiency of an executioner. But in seeking to purge the world of sin, he had created a private hell for himself. Philip's body, once rigid with discipline and cloaked in royal dignity, was now a grotesque ruin. He suffered from gout so severe that he could no longer walk. His fingers were twisted, swollen, and locked in perpetual agony. But that was only the beginning. Worse than the pain, worse than the decay, was the stench, a constant reminder that his body was rotting while he still breathed. He had developed a festering abscess in his lower back, an ulcer that would not heal. For months, pus and blood seeped from the wound. Flies gathered around him constantly. Despite the best efforts of his attendants, they laid eggs in his flesh, and soon, maggots began to crawl from the open sore. The most Catholic king, once the master of continents and oceans, was now being eaten alive by insects, and he knew it. His chamber was dark and heavy with incense, not just for devotion, but to mask the unbearable odor. Servants wept from the smell but dared not show it. The ulcer had grown so large that it revealed parts of his spine. Surgeons tried to scrape away the infected flesh, but their tools were dull, their knowledge crude. The king screamed and begged for death. Still, no one dared end his suffering. He believed it was divine punishment, a purification by pain, and so he endured. Each day, Philip's room became more of a tomb. He was rarely moved. The curtains were drawn. Priests surrounded his bed, murmuring prayers, offering holy relics, and preparing him for the end. He clutched crucifixes and called for his dead wives and children, their names whispered through cracked lips. His eldest son, Don Carlos, the mad prince he may have ordered killed. His third wife, Elizabeth of Valois, whom he had loved deeply and lost. And of course his great enemy and former wife, Queen Mary I of England, whose country had humiliated him by destroying the Armada. But no ghost haunted Philip more than his own conscience. He had spent his life convinced he was doing God's will, yet the Spain he left behind was teetering. Endless war had drained the treasury. The Inquisition had turned science and progress into suspicion and fear. The Armada had sunk, the Netherlands rebelled, and Protestantism had spread. His enemies were stronger than ever. His empire was cracking, and here he lay, bloated, broken, blind in one eye, his skin yellow with jaundice, crawling with worms. One of the few people allowed to see him near the end was his daughter, Isabel Clara Eugenia. Even she, his beloved, could barely suppress her horror. When she entered the room, she found her father lying half-naked, moaning, his sheets stained with blood, bile, and worse. His body was covered in sores. Nurses had stuffed herbs under the mattress to try and hold back the insects. They failed. Maggots still swarmed, burrowing under his skin, chewing through royal flesh like it was dung. His screams echoed through the stone corridors of the Escorial. "Let me die!" he cried. "Let me go to God!" But death would not come quickly. It dragged itself out for 53 days. 53 days of rot, delirium, infection, and prayers that went unanswered. The greatest king of the age was now its most wretched creature, trapped in a decaying body, condemned by his own beliefs to suffer until the bitter end. And then, at last, on September 13th, 1598, Philip II died. His final moments were marked not by peace, but by exhaustion. He died not as a mighty emperor, but as a warning, a man consumed by the very fire he had wielded for so long. His death shook Europe, not out of sympathy, but out of awe and horror. Word spread quickly of the decay, of the ulcers, of the maggots. Protestants whispered it was divine justice. Catholics wept, unsure what his suffering meant. Was it a sign of ultimate penance or punishment? At his funeral, the Spanish court displayed his body for days. He was buried in a lead-lined coffin to contain the rot in the crypt of El Escorial, a palace he had built as a monument to piety and power and which had become his final prison. But no marble tomb, no golden crown, no clerical eulogy could hide the truth. Philip II, king of half the world, had died in a stinking, insect-ridden bed, consumed by his own flesh, punished by his own convictions. He left behind a son, Philip III, who lacked his father's fire and cruelty. Spain would continue to decline, slowly bleeding out its empire over the next century. The flame of Spanish supremacy flickered, and the king who had once ruled the largest empire in human history was remembered less for his triumphs and more for the horror of his final breath. Because in the end, no man, and not even a king, that can escape death, not even one who believed he spoke for God,